Cześć, cześć, cześć. Okay, good morning, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, I'm sorry, can't hear you.
I told you that, yes, I can hear you well.
You can hear me. Okay, I can't hear you very well. So your name is Nenny, is that correct?
My name is Nene. Nene. Yeah.
Nene, were you in the first class?
Last time I went to the bank with my family in the morning, so I didn't join your class, sorry.
Huh? Okay, so you didn't do the homework?
Not,
No, you didn't get the materials? No, no.
no, not yet.
Oh, okay,
Sorry.
that's no problem. Finn, are you a student or are you part of the management?
Anh Neil อาจารย์จอน Neil
You're who, sorry?
yeah
Yeah, what? Can't hear what you're saying, I'm afraid. Okay, so we've got one student in at the moment, is that correct? And we've got two students in. Okay, so Titi Chair, can you write your nickname for me? Mimi. Mimi, were you in the first class? Mimi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Were you in the first class?
Yeah. Yes.
You were. Okay, so did you manage to do the bit of homework that I sent you? Okay, we've got two students in the class. Let's have a look at what you did. Let's just go over what we did in the first class, shall we? So in the first class, I introduced presentation skills, and what we did was we did a very short presentation. Everybody gave me a presentation of themselves. Mimi, were you in the first class, really?
No.
Okay, so we've got two brand new students in the class then. Okay. All right, so let's try to regroup them. So in the first class, I introduced presentation skills to the students who were in the class. And what I did was asked everybody to do a short presentation just introducing themselves. What we did then was we looked at a bad presentation, and the students looked at the presentation and they decided what they thought was bad about the presentation. What were the poor points of the presentation? So we then looked at how to improve this bad presentation that we saw a video of. And one way that we decided to do that was to make a very strong opening, to open your presentation very well. And the key features for this are greeting participants. So you need to do a very strong, warm welcome with the participants. And you need to explain what the title of your presentation is. Now, we looked at a number of phrases that you can use for this purpose, and we ordered them into different headings. So, for example, greeting Welcome participants, your name, position. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name's So we have a number of phrases that we can use for each part of our opening. So title of your presentation today, I'd like to talk to you about the purpose of a presentation. So the title of the presentation would be one thing, but the purpose is what you want your audience to be able to do at the end of your presentation. We also determined that we should talk about how we should explain how long the presentation will take so that your audience know how long to focus. You need to explain what you have divided your talk into. So you need to introduce the different parts of your presentation and talk about any visual aids. So perhaps you're going to give them a PowerPoint presentation. Perhaps you're going to give them everything that they need in a document. You need to explain where your audience need to look to be able to do their presentation, to be able to follow your presentation. It's very important that your audience are given the opportunity to answer questions. So you need to explain to them when they have the ability to ask questions. Okay, so we got a number of phrases, and we also looked at the need to link the different parts of your presentation. So, for example, if you have divided your talk into 4 different parts, you will introduce topic 1. So that's my introduction. Let's start with, and then provide the details that you need for the first part of your provide the details that you need in your introduction. So when your introduction is finished, so we've looked at the company size, its location, etc. Now let's look at the company does and its customers. So we are, throughout your presentation, you're explaining that one section has finished and the next section, the next topic is being introduced. That covers what the company does and its customers. Now I'd like to go on to what the company is doing at the moment. So that's what the company is doing at the moment. What about the future? As you can see, we are continually going back and back. We're going backwards to say that we've finished one section and then we're going on to the next section. And we also looked at how to finish your presentation. So we've got more phrases that we can use to finish the presentation. And so, for example, signaling the end. When you are approaching the end of your presentation, it's very important that you tell your audience you're coming to an end. It's important to summarize your presentation. Give a brief summary of what was in your content. And some presentations require concluding and recommending. Perhaps you're doing a presentation on a business model or a business choice, something that you need to be able to make a decision on. So conclusions and recommendations. Closing is when you basically just tell the audience when you've finished and inviting questions. We then listened to a presentation provided by Electrolux company, and we wrote down the details. And in the last class, I got the participants to do a brief presentation on 2 companies. Now, it was very rough. There was very limited amount of preparation time, and so it wasn't as smooth as it could be, but the presentations that the students gave incorporated all of these phrases that we covered in the class. So we then went on to look at so now we've got more students in the class. Let's see. So we then went on to look at very important parts of presentations, and that is talking about information. Okay, so we looked at the different types of charts, graphs, and tables that you can use to be able to give an introduction, to be able to give a presentation. And we looked at some of the language that we can use to give a presentation. So exports fell slightly, then improved. Unemployment decreased steadily, then remained stable. Sales rose sharply and reached a peak in the summer. Production costs went up dramatically. So we looked at the types of phrases that we can use to describe changes in information. Okay. So we looked at the prepositions that we need. Sales went up by 9%. Inflation remained stable at 2.5%. There was a steady decrease in production costs. Exports fell from 1,000 units to 870 units in a month. Production costs rose by €3 per unit. There was a rise of, and that should be, my apologies, that should be in salaries. We then did a listening exercise where a person was giving a presentation on his company, and we drew the graph that represented the information he was talking about. I gave the students who were present in the class a homework activity to do. And okay, so who's in the presentation right now then? How many people? Just 2, is that correct? Okay, so let's just move on then. Okay. Now, do you have the material that was sent to you last week? Nene, do you have the material that was sent to you last week?
Yeah, I'm checking. I think they sent in the line group. Let me give me a sec, please.
Mimi, do you have the material that you were sent last week?
Yes, I have.
Okay, so you can see this page then. Can you look at this page like on a iPad or mobile phone?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so you both got the materials, right? Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, that's great. Now, we looked at, in the last class, we looked at some language about how to provide presentations. And what we've got here, we've got some more language about describing changes. Okay, so let's have a look at this vocabulary. Have a look at the graph A. As you can see, there's a very small change. So we might say, for example, sales increased or went up slightly, or we can use there was a slight rise or a slight increase in sales. So we have two phrases. We have a verb and an adverb. Sales went up slightly, or we've got a noun. There was a slight increase in sales. Okay. So what about B? Increased, went up, gradually, gradual increase. So slightly is a very small change. Gradually is a slightly more aggressive change. And C, increased, went up sharply. So slightly, very small change. Gradually, a slightly steeper change, and sharply, a much sharper change. The sharpest change is dramatically. So as you can see in D, sales increased or went up dramatically. There was a dramatic rise or a dramatic increase in sales. You can look at E. E, the changes are very sudden and they go up and down. And when changes are of this nature, we suggest that sales fluctuated. Have a look at F. In F, there are no changes whatsoever. So as a result, we would say sales remained constant. So what about G? Sales peaked. Peak is the highest point, the biggest change. And again, we can use a verb phrase or we can use a noun phrase. Sales peaked in the autumn. There was a peak in the autumn. Sales bottomed out. That's the lowest point, or we can call that a trough. So the opposite of a peak is a trough. Now, if we look at the last item, I, sales remained fairly constant. So I is fairly constant, but F is remained constant. What's the difference between I and F? How is I and F different?
In my opinion, I have a bit like something different, like
Yeah,
something
what's-
down,
What's the difference?
like they coming remind, then going down a bit and then come back to the normal.
Okay, so it's a very minor change. It's a very small change.
Yeah, small change.
So as a result, we would say fairly constant, not 100% constant. Give me one moment. So when we are talking about information in graphs, we need to talk about time. And generally in business, we talk about time in half years or quarters. So mid-year, in the middle of the year, the first quarter, the second quarter, the third quarter, the final quarter. How many months are in a quarter?
Well,
How many months are in a quarter?
in a quarter, oh, half of them, right? Right?
No,
No,
you've got 4 quarters. How many months are there in a year?
we have 12 months in a year.
And so we have 4 quarters.
Mm-hmm.
So how many months are there in a quarter?
3,
So first quarter will be January to March, second quarter, April to June, third quarter, July to September, and the final quarter, October to December. So that's typically how we talk about time. We could talk about the first half of the year or the first part of the year, the second half of the year, or the latter part of the year. At the beginning of the year, at the end of the year. And if you are talking about changes throughout the year, then that's for the whole 12 months. Now, I'm going to read some sentences. And what I want you to do is I want you to look at these graphs and I want you to listen to the information and I want you to decide which graph is which. Which graph am I talking about? Okay. So first graph we'll do together. The price A, the price of silver jewelry fluctuated all year. Prices are rising at the moment. So which graph do you think is A?
6,
6. Okay. Okay. Good. Going to give you another sentence. Over the last 5 years, computer sales went down gradually until last year when they went up dramatically. Okay, so I'm going to say the sentence again. Over the last 5 years, computer sales went down gradually until last year when they went up dramatically.
I think 5, right?
Not 5, no.
Not 5, right?
Mimi, what do you think? Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the sentences, and 2 of you, I want you to discuss which graph you think I'm explaining. Okay. All right, so again, over the last 5 years, computer sales went down gradually until last year when they went up dramatically. Which ones
7,
went down gradually? Okay. Do you agree? Okay. All right. So let's have a look at that. All right. So next sentence. Since the introduction of CDs, there's been a sharp decline in the number of LP records sold. As you can see, 3 years ago, sales of LP records stopped completely. you like me to read it again?
Yes, please.
Since the introduction of CDs, there's been a sharp decline in the number of LP records sold. As you can see, 3 years ago, the sales of LP records stopped completely. So if they stopped completely, it stopped down to 0. Which graph?
10, right? Is it 10?
I don't know. What does Mimi think?
10.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So the number of tape recorders sold went up gradually until the middle of the year when sales peaked. Since then, sales have fallen gradually.
13.
13. Okay. Okay. Sales of PDAs fell sharply at the beginning of the year. Sales fell slightly during the remainder of the year. We read it again for you. The number of tape recorders sold went up gradually until the middle of the year when sales peaked. Since then, sales have fallen gradually.
Nine. Right.
Yeah, well, let's read it again. Let's have a listen again.
Yeah. Thanks.
The number of tape recorders sold went up gradually until the middle of the year when sales peaked, and then sales have fallen gradually. So something that went up in the middle of the year and then fell gradually. Now, 13. Have we got 13 right, you think? Okay, let's move on. Let's have a look. Sales of PDAs fell at the beginning of the year. Sales fell slightly during the remainder of the year. So that's E. Fell sharply at the beginning of the year and fell slightly during the remainder of the year. So they fell sharply and then fell slightly. Which one would do? Which one is a sharp fall and then a slight fall?
14.
Okay. Yeah, that looks good to me. Sales of video cassettes were constant for the first 3 months of the year. There's been a slight increase in sales since then. So constant at the beginning of the year and then a slight increase in sales. Again, sales of video cassettes were constant for the first 3 months of the year. There's been a slight increase in sales since then. So if they were constant for the first 3 months, did they go up or did they go down? Right, let me read it again. sales of video cassettes were constant for the first 3 months of the year. So something is constant. What do we say? It's constant. Doesn't change
No.
for the first 3 months of the year. And there's been a slight increase in sales since then.
15.
Okay. Good. Very few motorcycles were sold 50 years ago. There's been a steady increase until this year when sales went down slightly.
12.
Sorry, that should be G. But it's not. And okay. And sales of tobacco peaked in the first half of the year. Then the government ban came in, sales went down sharply. Since then, sales have gone up sharply. Gone up slightly.
9.
9. Number 9 should be 8. Okay. Sales of pens have been absolutely constant all year. Sales of pens have been absolutely constant all year.
1.
So number 1 should be 9. Sales of pens have been, sorry, that's already. Sales of shoes went up slightly throughout the first half of the year and went down slightly throughout the remainder of the year. However, there's been a dramatic increase coming up to Christmas. Listen again. Sales of shoes went up slightly throughout the first half of the year and went down slightly throughout the remainder of the year. However, there's been a dramatic increase coming up to Christmas.
2.
2.
There was a slight increase in the number of tennis balls sold this year. Slight increase in the number of tennis balls sold this year. So it's been a slight increase and it's been this year. So it's going to be the whole year. Any ideas? A slight increase in the number of tennis balls sold this year.
3.
I would agree with that. Okay, there has been a gradual rise in sales of jackets this year, with a sharp rise towards the end of the year and a dramatic fall towards the end of the year. There's been a gradual rise in sales of jackets this year, with a sharp rise towards the end of the year and a dramatic fall at the end of the year.
Nine.
So dramatic fall at the end of the year, number 9.
Five.
5. Okay, let's have a look. There's been a gradual rise in sales jackets this year, with a sharp rise towards the end of the year. There's been a gradual rise in the sales of jackets this year, with a sharp rise towards the end of the year and a dramatic fall. So it's all rises and then a dramatic fall. So which one's going up and then a dramatic fall at the end? Now, maybe you're going to need to change some of the graphs. Maybe you need to change them now. Okay, let's move on. Cup sales bottomed out mid-year, but then recovered. They bottomed out mid-year, but then recovered.
Five.
5.
Mhm. Mhm. There was a dramatic rise in medical sales, followed by an equally dramatic fall. Things have remained fairly constant since then. Dramatic rise, dramatic fall, and fairly constant since then.
8.
8.
Mhm. Spoon sales fluctuated in the first half of the year and then remained fairly constant.
11.
Okay. Okay, so we're missing a few. Okay, so let's have a look at these answers. Number 1 is I. So sales of pens have been absolutely constant this year. Okay, so that's correct. Number 2 is J, which is sales of shoes went up slightly throughout the first half of the year, then went down slightly throughout the remainder of the year. There's been a dramatic increase coming up to the end of the year. So J, correct. Number 3 is K. So we're correct there. And K was, there's a slight increase in the number of tennis balls sold this year. So slight increase throughout the year. Number 4 was G. So let's have a look at G. Very few motorcycles were sold 50 years ago. So this is a big time period, 50 years. There's been a steady increase since then until this year, when sales went down slightly. So this is a very big time period. So this one should be G. Okay. And number 5, we said M. Number 5, yeah, is M, which is correct. which is sales bottom out mid-year, but then recovered. And number 6 is A. Price of jewelry fluctuated all year. Okay, very good. Number 7 is B. Which was over the last 5 years, sales went down gradually until last year when they went up dramatically. So good. Number 7 is, sorry, number 8 is N. There was a dramatic rise in the number of medical sales. Okay. So, yeah. Number 7 is B. Yeah, correct. Number 8 is N. Good. And number 9 is H. So let's read H. H is sales of tobacco peaked in the first half of the year. So this is the first half of the year. When the government ban came in, sales went down sharply. Sales have gone up slightly. So this is H. Okay. That's the one we haven't got is 14, which is E. And E is sales of video cassettes were constant for the first, beg your pardon. 14 is E. Sales of PDAs fell sharply at the beginning of the year, and sales fell slightly towards the end of the year. Okay. All right, good. So can at least recognize that language, which is a good thing. Okay, now, when you are doing presentations, are you normally talking about the past, the present, or the future? Do you think? Well, typically when you are doing a presentation, you will be talking about previous information, right? Particularly in business, when you're talking about things like sales, the information will be from the previous year. So I want to have a look at past tenses and how to use them correctly. Okay. So have a look at these words, and what I want you to do, I want you to match the word with the definition. So we've got purchase, market, contain, launch, remove, acquire, initiate, license, increase, release, invent, earn. Okay, so what about purchase? What does purchase mean? Have a look at these definitions and tell me which word do you think matches with, which definition matches with the word purchase?
To
Again, sorry?
buy something.
Okay. So purchase a, let's put that number 2. What about market? If you market something, it's a verb. What does it mean?
Five.
Nope. What is marketing? Can anybody explain? So I think you covered marketing in your Fin Business School course. How would we define marketing? What's involved in marketing?
11.
What's involved in marketing? Marketing is advertising and promotion. And so, yeah, I think number 11 would be a good definition for market. Okay, so let's put number 11 in here. Okay. Contain. Something contains something. What would it be? Which definition do you think?
12.
No, not keep something so that you can sell it. Okay, so if you contain something, maybe you can contain it in a box or you can contain it in a crate. So contain, have something within. Launch. If you launch a business or you launch a new product, what does that mean?
Start something for the first time.
Can you think of any others? Are there any others which might be better? Think about launch a product, for example.
Create or design something for the first time.
Okay, so definitely not.
Oh, okay.
So if you launch something, start something or make something available so people can buy it. So C is 6 and D is 5. About remove. If you remove something from something else, what does that mean? Look at these definitions.
Nine.
Again, sorry.
9. Number 9. Take something out of something else.
Okay, that sounds fair enough. And what about suggest? If you suggest something to somebody.
1.
1.
So give somebody an idea what to do. Yeah, I would agree with that. Now, what about acquire? What does acquire mean? Are we talking about business? What does acquire mean?
Is that get money for doing something?
No,
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 right?
that's business. If you acquire something. Okay, so if you acquire something, you buy something. So how are they different? Purchase and acquire. How is it different? So if you purchase something, that usually means like a consumer. Right? So you might purchase something from 7-Eleven. You might go and buy something, but acquire, buy something. For example, a business buys another business. So that's acquire, when a business buys another business. Okay. So, for example, in Thailand, Thai Bev acquired KFC. They bought KFC, the whole company. Initiate. What does initiate mean? You initiate something.
7.
Start something for the first time. Good. And what about license? You license.
3. Allow someone to use or own something.
So can you give me an example of license?
Like driving license. Like
So in Coca-Cola, is Coca-Cola a Thai company or is it an American company?
American.
And do you get all your Coca-Cola from America? All the Coca-Cola that you drunk in Thailand, is it all from America?
No.
So who makes it in Thailand? It's a company called Thai Nam Tip, and they have the license to make Coca-Cola in Thailand. That's a license. When you give somebody permission to do something or to own something. Okay. What about increase? Something increases. What's the definition for increase? Well, if you increase something, then it becomes more. So, what about release?
5.
I think release, start something. So make something that's available. So I think we've got that already. So what about, is there anything else? I think we're okay. Make something available for the first time. So for example, iPhone released, Apple released iPhone 16 this year. Okay. If you stock something, what do you do?
12.
Okay, so you keep something so you can sell it. If you invent something, what does it mean?
8.
So this is for the very first time. So for example, Steve Jobs invented the iPhone. And if you earn, you get money for doing something. Okay. So J, number 4. K, number 10. L, 12. M, number 8. And N, number 13. Okay, good. Now, how do we make these words past tense? All of these words, how do we make them past tense? So we're talking about past simple. How do you make them past simple, these words? Well, we add D. These are what's called standard words. So purchased, what about this? How do we add this? ED, ED, ED. Okay. So we have ED at the end of each of these words, but there is a problem. When we use ED in English, it makes different sounds. So for example, some of the words have a, just give me just one moment, please. Okay. Some of the words have a T sound at the end. Okay. And some of the words have a D sound at the end. Okay. And some of the words have an id sound at the end. So we've got T, D, id. And it's important to be able to use these sounds correctly. Okay, just give me one moment. Okay, so have a look at these columns, and what I want you to do is I want you to tell me which sound you should make for these words. Is it number 1? Is it number 2? Or is it number 3? Purchased. 1, 2, or 3?
1,
Okay, and marketed. 1, 2, or 3? Marketed.
1, marketing.
Marketed is number 3.
Oh,
Marketed. Contain.
two,
Okay, and launched. Launched.
1,
Okay, good. Okay, and remove. 1, 2, or 3?
two,
Suggested.
1,
Suggested.
3,
Required.
two,
Initiated.
1,
Initiated. It's an id sound. Licensed.
1,
Increased. Increased. 1, 2, or 3. Okay, so increased is number 1. It's a t. Released. One, 2, or 3.
1.
Stocked. Stocked. 1, 2, or 3.
1.
Okay. Invented.
3.
Earn.
2.
All right, good. Now, got those in the right columns. And my understanding is that you're supposed to have a break, a 10-minute break every hour. So it's 11 o'clock right now. We'll take a 10-minute break. I'll see you back here in 10 minutes. Is that okay?
Okay.
Okay.
See you in 10 minutes then. Bye-bye. Okay, let's continue. Now, when you're using past tense ed sounds, as I explained, we have three different sounds. We've got a t sound, we've got a d sound, and we've got an id sound. Why do we use these different sounds? Well, number three is kind of easy. If the last letter is a D or a T, then we add id. That's fairly straightforward. Okay, so if the last letter is a T or a D, then we add id. So that's fairly straightforward. These are a lot less straightforward. Now, have a look at the last letters or the last sound of each word. Purchase. So we've got a s sound, which does not come from your voice. Purchase, launch, license, increase, stock. These sounds do not come from your voice. And so we call this a voiceless sound. And if it's a voiceless sound at the end, we add a t sound. These sounds are from your voice, contain. You put your fingers on your throat, you can hear them. Contain, remove, acquire, earn. These sounds are from your voice. And so, if they're from your voice, we add a d sound. So let's just practice saying these sounds. Can you repeat after me? Purchased. Purchased. Launched. Launched. Licensed. Can you repeat these sounds after me? Licensed. Increased. Released. Stocked. Contained. Moved. Acquired. Earned. Okay, let's have a look at the third sound. Marketed. Can you repeat after me? Marketed.
Marketed,
Suggested.
suggested,
Initiated.
initiated,
Invented.
invented,
So, Mimi, can you say these sounds for me?
purchase,
Mimi, can you say this sound for me? Purchased. Mimi.
She said she went to toilet.
Ah, okay. So, Nene, can you say
Yes.
this? Purchased.
Purchased,
Contained.
contained,
Marketed.
marketed,
Suggested.
suggested,
Removed.
removed,
Launched.
launched,
Best. Can you say this word? Licensed.
license,
Acquired.
acquire,
Initiated.
initiated,
Invented.
invented,
Earned.
earn,
Released.
release.
Okay, now what I want you guys to do is I want you to put these words into this story. So I'll copy them. And we're looking at the birth of Coca-Cola. And we're looking at the history of Coca-Cola. And what I want you guys to do is I want you to fill this story with the correct verbs, and reason is so you can practice pronouncing the correct ed sound. Okay. So let's have a look at this story about the birth of Coca-Cola, how Coca-Cola started. Dr. John Pemberton, Coca-Cola in May 1886. So what word from this list do you think should go in here?
Beans.
Again, sorry. Dr. John Pemberton, Coca-Cola in May 1886. So this was the first time Coca-Cola was available. This was the first time Coca-Cola was a product. So which word should go here? So the word is invented. Dr. John Pemberton invented Coca-Cola in May 1886. His bookkeeper, Frank Robinson, first the name Coca-Cola. What do you think? Which of these words could be here? So which of these words do you think would be in this game? Suggesting the name Coca-Cola. Members of the public, Coca-Cola for the first time at Jacobs Pharmacy in Atlanta, USA, May the 8th, 1886. So what do you think? Which word could go in here? Members of the public, people like you and me, Coca-Cola for the first time. What could they do on May the 8th?
Launch.
Members of the public, people like you and me. We are members of the public. What could they do, you think? For the first time at Jacobs Pharmacy in Atlanta. So this is a shop.
Marketed.
Purchased.
Purchase.
So they purchased Coca-Cola for the first time. Jacobs Pharmacy in Atlanta. All right, so initially the soft drink as a tonic. So a tonic is something that gives you energy. For example, in Thailand, Emroy Hasib is a tonic. And initially the soft drink was marketed as a tonic. Initially, the soft drink marketed as a tonic, extracts of cocaine, as well as the caffeine-rich cola nut. So, which word should go in here? It had cocaine in it. Coca-Cola had cocaine in it. So which word should be here? Which of these words should go in here, do you think?
Contain.
Okay. As well as in 1905, Coca-Cola, cocaine from the drinks ingredients. So 1905, they decided not a good idea to have cocaine in Coca-Cola. So what did they do?
Remove.
They removed cocaine from the drinks ingredients. Okay, good. Now, what I want you guys to do is I want you to look at the remainder. Okay, and I want you to look at the gaps. And I want you to tell me which words should go into each gap. So you can discuss it with each other, talk about it with each other, and tell me which words should go into each gap. So Dr. Pemberton sold 9 servings, and what? Which word should go here, do you think?
Earn.
Earn. Okay, good. Okay. Unfortunately, his expenses were $70 in the first year, so initially he sold the drink at a loss. Asa Candler from Dr. Pemberton in 1887 for $2,300. What should be the word go in here, do you think? $2,300. So what did he do you think? Well, he paid him $2,300. So which word could it be to go in here?
Accord.
Acquired. Good. Asa Candler acquired Coca-Cola from Dr. Pemberton in 1887. By the late 1890s, Coca-Cola was one of America's most popular fountain drinks, largely due to Candler's aggressive marketing of the product. Okay. With Asa Candler at the helm, Coca-Cola syrup sales by 4,000% between 1890 and 1900. Sales by over 4,000%. So what do you think? Go in here.
Increase.
Good. Increased sales by over 4,000%. During this time, advertising was an important factor in Candler's success. By the turn of the last century, thousands of shops across the United States and Canada, what did they do? What do shops do when they keep Coca-Cola? What's the word we're going to use?
Stock.
How do we say it?
Stocked.
Stocked. Around the same time, the company syrup sales independent bottling companies. So another word for started. Another word for started. Initiated. initiated syrup to independent bottling companies. So these are independent companies. What are they? Which word? So when one company sells another company's product, what do they need?
License.
Okay, so they are licensed. Sell the drink. On April 23rd, Coca-Cola new Coke formula. So this is available for the first time. Okay, so they launched the new Coke formula. Okay. And in 1969, the Coca-Cola company's advertising also new advertising campaign. So what word should go in here, do you think? Another word for something that they did for the first time. They also an advertising campaign.
Release. Release or something. Release.
Okay, so you actually release a formula. Okay, so for example, iPhone, what software is it? You release something which is not a product. So new Coke formula, yeah, it's a bit like iPhone iOS 16. It's not something real. And so you launched this, they launched iOS 16 and they released the new Coke formula. So the formula is not the product, but they launched the advertising campaign centered on the real thing. Okay, good. Now, this is a story about Coca-Cola, and let's have a look at some of the phrases that are in this story. And don't need to look at ChatGPT or Google or anything like that. Let's have a look and just think generally, what do these phrases mean? So members of the public, I said to you before, members of the public are people in general. People in general, you and me, members of the public. The public is everybody in a country, in an area. So members of the public, everybody. And they purchase Coca-Cola for the first time, Jacob's Pharmacy. Initially, what does initially mean, do you think? Based on how it's used here, what does initially mean?
Something new.
This
No.
is for the first time. So initially, the soft drink marketed as a tonic contained extracts of cocaine. So at first, it had cocaine in it. What's a serving, do you think? Dr. Pemberton sold 9 servings of soft drink each day. What would be a serving? How do you serve Coca-Cola? Well, give me examples of how to serve Coca-Cola. Well, maybe you could serve it in a bottle, or you could serve it in a cup, or you could serve it in a glass. Okay, but every time that you sell a bottle, or every time you sell a cup or a glass or a can, that is a serving. So 3 bottles, 3 servings, 3 cups, 3 servings, 3 glasses, 3 servings, 3 cans, 3 servings. Unfortunately, is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Bad.
And expenses. What are expenses according to this then? Dr. Pemberton sold 9 servings of the soft drink each day and earned $50 in his first year. Unfortunately, his expenses were $70 in the first year, so initially he sold the drink at a loss. What are your expenses, do you think? So he earned $50, but he spent $70. What would he spend $70 on? What would his expenses be, do you think?
Like the money spent on something.
Like what? Like materials? Yeah, like money. So yeah, money spent on materials, on costs, etc. Okay, good. At a loss. So what does that mean, at a loss? So expenses were $70 in the first year, so he sold the drink at a loss. How much did he lose? He earned $50, his expenses were $70. How much did he lose? He lost $20. So at a loss is you lose money. The late 1890s, when would those be? Which years would the late 1890s be, do you think? Which years would be the late 1890s? Well, the late 1890s would be 1897, 1898, 1899, those years. At the helm, Asa Candler acquired Coca-Cola from Dr. Pemberton in 1887. So after 1887, who was the owner of Coca-Cola? Asa Candler acquired Coca-Cola from Dr. Pemberton in 1887. So after 1887, who was the owner of Coca-Cola? So the owner of Coca-Cola was Asa Candler. So what's his role? If he's the owner, what does at the helm mean, do you think? With Asa Candler at the helm, Coca-Cola increased syrup sales by 4,000% between 1890 and 1900. What does it mean then, at the helm, do you think?
Like at the moment.
Not at the moment. In control of the company or the boss of the company. Okay. During this time, during which time? during this time is 1890 to 1900. Okay. By the turn of the century, the turn of the last century. So what's a century? A century is 100 years. So what century are we in right now? We're in the 21st century. So by the turn of the century, the beginning of the century. What's an advertising campaign? Can you give me an example of an advertising campaign? So an advertising campaign could include TV advertising, could include newspaper advertising, could include radio advertising. So an advertising campaign is a system of advertising. It's a planned advertising campaign. So a slogan is, it's the real thing. So what is a slogan? It's a phrase that people understand product by. So, for example, what is the slogan for McDonald's hamburgers? What's their phrase that they use? So McDonald's hamburgers is, I'm loving it. What about Thai Airways? What's the slogan for Thai Airways? So the slogan for Thai Airways is smooth as silk. Okay, good. Now let's have a look at exercise number 5. And we're going to look at some prepositions and phrases. Okay. So we've got some phrases here, and I want you to tell me which preposition we should use with these phrases. 1999, in, on, at, or between.
In.
Okay. And August, in, on, at, or between.
In.
The winter, in, on, at, or between.
In.
Okay. The afternoon.
At.
Not at the afternoon, in the afternoon.
In.
Okay, and what about Sunday? Which phrase, which preposition do we use
On.
On.
on? 5th of October,
On.
and Christmas. Which preposition would you use with Christmas?
At
1890 and 1900. Which preposition would you use?
Between.
Midnight.
At
the morning.
in
In the morning, good. And the 1960s.
In
1960s. Christmas Day.
on
The summer.
in
The weekend.
in
No.
No.
When in
at
at the weekend. Tuesday.
on
On Tuesday. Lunchtime.
at
Lunchtime. And September.
in
Okay, good. Now we've looked at some language that you can use to talk about information. We've looked at how to pronounce some key phrases. And what I want you to do is I want you to prepare a presentation. Now, you're not going to do the presentation today. You're going to do the presentation on the last day of the course. Now, we have 3 students in the class. Only 1 was in the last class. So I'm not quite sure how we're going to work this, but at this stage, I would be telling students to prepare a presentation for the last day of this course. So what do I want you to do? Okay. I want you to create your own company. Okay. I want you to imagine a company. I want you to think about the name, and I want the details. I want where it's the name of the company, its nationality, where it's from, where its head office is. I want information, for example, when it started. What year did it start operations? How many people does it employ? And its global turnover. What does turnover mean? What's the turnover of a company? What does it mean? Turnover of a company is the amount of money that that company makes in 1 year. It's not profit. It's the amount of money that you spend, that you earn. I want to know what your company spends money on. Now, if you're in the last class, you know, maybe companies spend money on product development, research and development. What do you spend your company's money on? And I want to know about your global divisions. So, for example, Electrolux has a consumer durables division, and that consumer durables division provides consumers with products like fridges, hoovers and cookers. And it also has a professional products division that provides products to businesses. So I want to know your imaginary company, the company that you've created. What are the different divisions in your company? What do you sell? I want to know about your products, about your brands, and final information. I want financial details for your company in 2024. So how are you going to do that? Well, very simple. I want you to draw your own graph, okay, for 2024. And then I want you to describe the financial graph for last year. Okay. So that's going to be your final presentation, and I will ask you all to do a presentation on the last day of the course. So Best, do you understand what I want you to do?
Yes.
So what are you going to do? Can you explain?
Create my own company,
And
draw my own graph.
and then at the end, what are you going to do on the final day of the course? What are you going to do?
Present.
Okay, fine. Okay, so Nene, are you able to do this, do you think? Would you like to try?
I will try my best.
And Mimi, how about you? Mimi,
Yes.
will you be able to do a presentation on the last day of the course for me?
Yes.
Great. So I really look forward to hearing your presentations. So I will send this to you, what we've written today. I'll send that to you after the class. And what I'd like you to do, you should have been sent part 3 of today's material. Can you open part 3? Did you get sent part 3? Did you get sent part 3?
Yes, I got it.
Okay, great. So let's have a look at part 3. Okay, and we're just going to review some of the items that we looked at in the previous course, in the previous class. Okay, so this should help you to do your presentation on your final class. All right. So what we're going to do, in the first class, we looked at a bad presentation, and you chose to explain what was bad about the presentation. And what we're going to do today is we are going to look at a really good presentation. And based on what she does that's really good, I want you to create some golden rules. What are the golden rules? What do you really need to do a good presentation? Okay. So I'm going to show you a presentation, and what I want you to do is to tell me what went really well in each part of the presentation. What did she do really well, and what do you need to copy to make your presentation? Okay, so I'm going to share this with you right now, and we can enjoy watching it for the next 10 minutes. Can you hear it? Okay,
Yes.
here we go.
Hi, my name's Gemma Cass. I'm one of the PAD tutors at the University of Bedfordshire, and I'm going to give you a very brief introduction of what paraphrasing is. So, by the end of today's session, you'll know about why we use references, the difference between quotes and paraphrasing, and how to paraphrase. So, there are three main reasons why it's important to reference in your assignments. First of all, references can help to validate your point of view. So if you're making a claim or an argument about anything in particular, it's always important to use evidence to make that a stronger argument, okay? The next reason is plagiarism. It's very easy to accidentally plagiarise in your work. So if you understand how to reference correctly, you'll avoid plagiarising. The last thing is it's a source for future investigation. So, for example, if anyone reads your work and they're interested to find out more about what this person has said, they can go away and they can locate that information, they can locate that source. So there's two ways for you to reference in text: quoting and paraphrasing. A quotation is when you copy a piece of text word for word from a book or another type of source. You should keep these to an absolute minimum at university by looking to see that you're paraphrasing rather than just copying lengthy text from somebody else's work. So, as I just mentioned, do not have them too long. That will eat into your word count and ultimately it will affect the mark that you'll get. So paraphrasing is what we're looking to see that you're doing in your assignments. Paraphrasing is when you look at other people's work and you put it into your own words. There's more to paraphrasing than just changing one or two words here and there or cutting out words from a sentence. It will show your understanding to the reader. So instead of just identifying that something's important and copying it word for word, you've been able to read it, understand it, and apply it to your work. So I'm going to show you an example of how to go from using a quote to paraphrasing it. So if we look at this quote here, in academic writing, it's essential to state the sources of ideas and information. Such references allow readers to refer back to the sources themselves. This next slide shows you my first attempt of paraphrasing. The original is at the bottom, my first attempt at the top. Cottrell states that in writing, it's important to state the sources of ideas. References allow readers to find the sources themselves. Okay, what do you think about my first attempt of paraphrasing?
You haven't quoted it properly.
It's not a very good attempt, you're right. I haven't done it properly. I've cut out some words here and there. I've used some synonyms. I've changed essential to important. It's not actually enough to do this and call it paraphrasing. At the top you'll see my next attempt. The original's at the bottom and my first attempt is in blue here. Cottrell states that referencing should always be used when using the ideas and opinions of others in academic writing so that the original source can be easily located. What do you think of this attempt?
Yeah, that's much better, and you properly reference the page as well.
Okay, so this is a much better attempt of paraphrasing. I'm not going to claim it's perfect, but you can see that I certainly have tried to put it into my own words and I've still got the same point across. And I've correctly referenced the author. So, once you've paraphrased, once you've put something into your own words, how do you include that in your text? Well, you need to make sure you put the surname of the author or the organisation, and you need to put the year of publication. So that will look like this. At the start of a sentence, Cottrell, 2001, stated that plagiarism is a confusing and difficult concept to fully understand. So you can see at the beginning of the sentence the author's surname goes first and the date of publication comes next. You would use a reference at the beginning of the sentence if you're planning on talking about this person's ideas further. For example, my next sentence says, this author also found that. You can see here I've referred back to Cottrell and it's obvious that I'm continuing to talk about this person. At the end of a sentence, it would look like this. Plagiarism is a confusing and difficult concept to fully understand. Cottrell 2001. If you use a reference at the end of the sentence, it implies that you're only talking about this last sentence, okay? So if you've written a whole paragraph and it's come from Cottrell, it doesn't make that clear. Putting it at the end of the sentence implies you're only talking about this very last sentence, okay? That's very important, and that's how accidental plagiarism can take place. So, to conclude, referencing correctly can really strengthen your assignments and help you to do very well in your course. When you paraphrase, you should write down what the author has said completely in your own words. Remember, it's not enough just to change 1 or 2 words here and there. Finally, you must give credit to the person whose idea you're using when you paraphrase, and to do this you must reference it correctly. If you're not sure how to do that correctly, you can have a look at your faculty guidelines available on the LR web. This is what your references would look like in a reference list, but we'll be talking about that next time. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, well thank you very much for listening. I hope that was helpful, and I'll see you again soon.
Okay, so that was a pretty good presentation. And what was she discussing in this presentation that she did, do you think? What was she talking about? What was the topic of her presentation? Well, she was talking about plagiarism. What's plagiarism? Plagiarism is when you copy words from somebody else's work and put it in your essays or your assignments. In academic institutes like universities, they don't appreciate you doing that. So what do? If you just copy words, that's not the best thing to do. According to her presentation, what do you need to do?
Paraphrase.
Paraphrase.
Okay. So she gave you some examples on how to paraphrase, which hopefully will be useful for you with your assignments. Okay. So what I want you to do is I want you to think about that presentation and what did she do that was very well done during that presentation. We're going to come back to that and we're going to think about it together. We're going to brainstorm what was really good about that presentation. But right now, I'm going to take a 10-minute break. Okay, and I'll see you back here in 10 minutes. Okay. All right, have a great break. I'll see you in 10 minutes. Bye-bye. Okay, welcome back. Best, are you there? Nene, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Hey, Mimi, are you there?
Yes.
Okay. So you just saw a presentation. And what do you think she did that was particularly good in that presentation? If we're going to make some golden rules, what do you think that she did that was very good? You just saw a presentation on plagiarism. What do you think that the presenter did well? Nothing? Do you think it was a good presentation or not a great presentation? What do you think? No, no comments. You don't think it was a good presentation?
Speak fluently.
Okay, but she's a native speaker, so she spoke fluently. What did she do that was good with the presentation? I think she introduced herself. Yeah, that's one thing that she did that was good. She introduced herself. Okay, anything else that you think she did well?
Tell the topic.
So she explained what her topic would be. Okay, she explained what the topic would be. Good. And anything else? Anything else that you think she did quite well? What about her slides? Were slides clear, do you think?
Quite
Yeah.
clear. Yes.
Okay, so her slides were clear. Okay. All right, so let's put that down. Anything else? I think she told people when they could ask questions, right? And when people did ask questions, what did she do? She responded to people's questions well. Anything else? It was clear when one section was finished and the next began. Anything else that you think she did particularly well? She was prepared for a presentation. Anything else? And what about her personality? Was she businesslike? She was friendly.
Friendly.
Yeah, I think so. Okay, good. Now, have a look at exercise number 2. Do you have this sheet available? Did they send this sheet to you? Part 3? Best, do you have part 3 sent to you?
Yes.
Nene, do you have it?
Yes, I have.
Mimi, do you have it?
Yes.
So let's have a look at exercise 2, which is called staging and signposting. So when you stage your presentation, that means that you have different sort of subtopics to talk about. And so when you stage a presentation, you have to think which is going to be the first part, which is going to be the second part, which is going to be the third part, and which is going to be the final part. Signposting is when you use phrases to show that one part of your presentation is finished and the next part is going to begin. So you're going to listen to a presentation right now. And what I'm going to do, got the sound. Okay, so you're going to listen to a presentation. And what I want you to do is I want you to answer question 1, 2, and 3. So question 1, what three areas is the speaker going to talk about? So there's going to be 3 things that the speaker is going to talk about. What can people do after the presentation? And final question, do you agree with the speaker's conclusion that a good diet and plenty of exercise makes us happier people? So let's listen to the presentation and let's see what we can do. Here we go.
5.3.
Good morning. First of all, thank you all for coming. Today, I'm going to talk about ways in which we can keep healthy. And as we all know, if we're healthy, we're happier and we work better. I've divided my presentation into 3 areas. Firstly, diet, what we eat and drink. Secondly, exercise. And finally, some tips to encourage you to continue a healthy lifestyle even when you're working hard or under stress. I'm happy to take questions at the end of the presentation. Okay, so that's diet. Now I'd like to move on to exercise. I think we all know how important exercise is, but do we do it? At this point, I'd like to hand over to my colleague Rachel, who is going to look at the type of exercise we need to do in order. So that brings us on to the final part of this presentation. Some practical advice on what we can do. I've got a handout here which I'll pass around. I suggest I finish my presentation here and we can all work in groups to look at some of the ideas and discuss how we can bring them into our lives. But before I do that, I'd like to make some general conclusions. To sum up, a good diet and plenty of exercise is essential for good health. That is obvious. but it also makes us happier people. You don't need to make major changes to your life. It's often the little things that make all the difference, as we shall see when we look at the advice on the handout. Thank you for listening.
Okay, so share your answers, 1, 2, and 3. What were the answers that you got? See if you have the same answer as your partner. Okay, so what's number 1 then? What 3 areas is the speaker going to speak about? What were the 3 areas that the speaker is going to speak about? No?
Diet, exercise, and tips.
Okay. What are the tips about? Tips on what? So number 1 was diet. Agree. Number 2 was exercise. And what were the tips about? Tips on what?
Eating.
That's diet.
Uh,
Okay. So this was tips on how to stay healthy when you are working hard or stressed. Okay. So, whoops. What are the 3, what can people do after the presentation? What did she say? So what can people do after the presentation? What did she say? No, she said that people could ask questions. Okay. All right, good. Now, what about your personal opinions? Do you agree with the speaker's conclusion that a good diet and plenty of exercise makes us happier people? Mimi, do you agree with that?
Yes.
Why? Why do you think it makes us happier people? Okay, Nene, how about you? Why do you think, do you agree? And why? Good diet, plenty of exercise makes us happier people. Do you agree with that conclusion or do you disagree?
I agree with that conclusion.
And why do you think it's important to have a good diet, plenty of exercise to make us happy? What's the rationale behind that?
Mm,
Okay, Best, what do you think? Do you agree?
I agree
Why?
because it makes you look good and healthy. You look slim.
Okay, does that make you happier?
Yes, very happy.
All right, good. All right, now have a look at these phrases in part 2. These are called signposting phrases. Okay. All right. And some of the phrases she used in the introduction, some in the middle, and some at the final part of the presentation. Okay. So I'm going to play the recording again. And what I want you to do is I want you to decide each phrase. Is it from the middle? Is it from the beginning? Is it from the final part of the presentation? Let's see what she says.
5.3.
Good morning. First of all, thank you all for coming. Today, I'm going to talk about ways in which we can keep healthy. And as we all know, if we're healthy, we're happier and we work better. I've divided my presentation into 3 areas. Firstly, diet, what we eat and drink. Secondly, exercise. And finally, some tips to encourage you to continue a healthy lifestyle even when you're working hard or under stress. I'm happy to take questions at the end of the presentation. Okay, so that's diet. Now I'd like to move on to exercise. I think we all know how important exercise is, but do we do it? At this point, I'd like to hand over to my colleague Rachel, who is going to look at the type of exercise we need to do in order. So that brings us on to the final part of this presentation. Some practical advice on what we can do. I've got a handout here which I'll pass around. I suggest I finish my presentation here and we can all work in groups to look at some of the ideas and discuss how we can bring them into our lives. But before I do that, I'd like to make some general conclusions. To sum up, a good diet and plenty of exercise is essential for good health. That is obvious, but it also makes us happier people. You don't need to make major changes to your life. It's often the little things that make all the difference, as we shall see when we look at the advice on the handout. Thank you for listening.
Okay, great. Now, what I want you to do, I want you to talk to each other and I want you to discuss each phrase. Which part of the presentation does it come from? Does it come from the introduction, the middle, or the final part of the presentation? So, work together. We have 11 phrases and discuss which part of the presentation each phrase comes from. No? Okay. So what about number 1? Which part of the presentation did it come from? The introduction, the middle, or the final part?
Middle.
And what about today? I'm going to talk about what? Where?
Introduction.
Intro.
That brings us to the final part of the presentation.
You know.
I'm happy to take questions at the end of the presentation.
Intro.
When, oh. Intro.
I think it's in the middle.
I want to take some questions at the end of the presentation. Okay, so I think she mentioned that in the introduction, and the reason is so that people know when to ask questions. I'd like to make some general conclusions. When's that going to be? You mean conclusion? Again, sorry?
Final.
So that's going to be the final part of the presentation. At this point, I'd like to hand over to my colleague. How's that going to be?
Middle.
Hand over. What does it mean? Hand over. if you hand over to your colleague, what does that mean? So if you hand over to your colleague, that means that you stop speaking and your colleague starts speaking instead. So that's called a handover. I've divided my presentation into 3 areas. Where would you say that, do you think?
Intro.
First of all, thank you all for coming.
Final.
I don't think so. First of all, thank you
Intro.
all. Wait, I think
True.
perhaps the introduction, yeah. To sum up,
Final.
good morning.
Intro.
Thank you for listening.
Final.
Okay, so we've got a number of phrases that you can use here to stage your presentation and to signpost when you're changing from one topic to another. So you can use these in your final presentation. Now, as I said to you, I'll be expecting visual aids in your final presentation. I will be expecting you to provide PowerPoint presentation. Doesn't have to be very elaborate, but it does have to be a PowerPoint presentation. And in that PowerPoint presentation, you can choose which visual aids you're going to use. Okay. So, number 1, what we're going to call number 1, do you think? Is it a pie chart? Is it a slide with prompt words, pie chart table, or line graph? Number 1, what is it?
Pie chart.
So number 1 is a pie chart. And what's number 2?
Line graph.
And number 3?
Slide.
And number 4?
Table.
And in your presentations, I'll be expecting you to do a line graph. Okay, so that's what I'll be expecting from you. So have a look at this. Which visual aid in number 1 would you use to introduce or summarize a topic? Show trends. So trends are changes over time. Present facts and figures, and for example, show market or regional share of a product or service. So what about A? I'd like you to discuss which of these you would use for these purposes. So which of the visual aids in number 1 would you use for A, B, C, and D? Any ideas? So what about A? Introduce, summarize a topic. What would you use, do you think?
Live.
Again, sorry?
Live.
So is it 1, 2, 3, or 4?
3.
Okay. To show trends, which one are you going to use to show trends?
2.
2. And to present facts and figures, which one are you going to use for that?
1.
Don't think so. No, facts and figures, I think it's going to be number 4. To show market, regional share of a product or service. So share. Okay. Which companies share the market for particular product? So for example, iPhone have maybe 50%, Samsung have 40%, and all other companies have 10%.
So
Which would you use for that purpose, do you think?
to compare
So is it going to be one, two,
one,
3, or 4?
I
Number
think one.
Okay, good enough. Okay. All right, good. Now, have a listen to this. Look at number 3. Listen to 3 extracts from a presentation about museum visitor numbers. So this is about the number of people who visit a museum. Which visual aids in one does the presenter use? Okay, so I want you to listen to his presentation and decide which visual aids you think the presenter is going to use.
4.4. 1.
This graph shows our visitor numbers in the past 5 years. The horizontal axis shows the year, and the vertical axis indicates visitor numbers. As you can see from the way the line rises, visitor numbers have risen in recent years. I'd now like to look at this in more detail. If I could bring your...
2.
On the next screen, you can see 2 pie charts. These pie charts represent the main nationalities of our visitors 5 years ago compared to today. Look carefully at the 2 charts. Sorry, you can't see? My apologies. I'll move to the left. Is that better? If you look at the blue segment, you can see the percentage of visitors from Europe. It clearly shows how this figure has fallen dramatically. The purple segment represents visitors from Asia, the yellow segment is Latin America, the green is the Middle East, and the red is visitors from North America. I'll just give you a moment to compare the 2 charts. While you're doing this, I'll...
3.
Can you all see the screen? Good. Can you read everything okay? No? The writing is quite small, I'm afraid. There was a lot to include. I'd better just take you through it. At the bottom of the screen, you can see a table. This describes our pricing structure. As you can see, we charge $25 for an adult, $15 for a student, and $10 for a child or senior citizen. We also offer a family pass for 2 adults and 2 children for $40. We've found that in the...
Okay, so check your answers with each other. What was number 1?
Two.
Number 1 was, again, sorry? Number 1 was a line graph, yeah? Number 2, okay? And what about number 2? What was number 2?
A pie chart.
Okay, so say number 1. And what about number 3? What did she use for number 3?
Table.
Okay, good. Now, you're going to listen to this recording again, and this time what I want you to do is to put these vocabulary items in the correct place in each sentence. So what I want you to do, I want you to work together, and I want you to decide which word should go into which sentence. And then we'll listen to the recording and you will see if you are correct or not. So, work together. What about number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, and number 6? No? Okay. What about number 1? Which word do you think should go into number 1? No? Okay. And what about number 2? And number 3? And number 4? 5? Number 6? No ideas? All right, so listen again and see if you can catch which word should go into which sentence.
4.4. 1.
This graph shows our visitor numbers in the past 5 years. The horizontal axis shows the year and the vertical axis indicates visitor numbers. As you can see from the way the line rises, visitor numbers have risen in recent years. I'd now like to look at this in more detail. If I could bring your...
2.
On the next screen, you can see 2 pie charts. These pie charts represent the main nationalities of our visitors 5 years ago compared to today. Look carefully at the 2 charts. Sorry, you can't see? My apologies. I'll move to the left. Is that better? If you look at the blue segment, you can see the percentage of visitors from Europe. It clearly shows how this figure has fallen dramatically. The purple segment represents visitors from Asia, the yellow segment is Latin America, the green is the Middle East, and the red is visitors from North America. I'll just give you a moment to compare the 2 charts. While you're doing this, I'll...
3.
Can you all see the screen? Good. Can you read everything okay? No? The writing is quite small, I'm afraid. There was a lot to include. I'd better just take you through it. At the bottom of the screen, you can see a table. This describes our pricing structure. As you can see, we charge $25 for an adult, $15 for a student, and $10 for a child or senior citizen. We also offer a family pass for 2 adults and 2 children for $40. We've found that in the...
Okay, all right, so check your answers with each other and let's see what we've got. Okay, so you don't want to talk to each other. What about number 1? This graph,
Show.
not show,
Describe.
Show. Shows. Okay, and what about number 2?
Indicate.
Number 2 indicates with an S. And so let's just have a look at this. What is the horizontal axis of your line graph? What's the horizontal axis? This is the horizontal axis, and the vertical axis is here. This is the vertical axis. Okay. Okay, so what about number 3? As you can what?
See.
As you can see from the way the line rises, we appear to be doing very well. These pie charts, what?
Represent.
Represent the main nationalities of our visitors. What about number 5?
Look
If
at.
you look at blue segment, you can see the percentage of visitors from Europe. What about number 6? This
Describe.
describes with an S. Describes. Our pricing description. Okay. So again, this is vocabulary and phrases that you can use when you are preparing your presentation for the final day. All right, good. You're gonna draw a line graph, and so let's have another quick look at which phrases we can use. Read the facts about the music industry and match them with the correct graphs. So what I'd like you to do, I'd like you to look at each sentence and match them with the graph below. So we'll do the first one together, and then I'll leave you to it. Music downloads rose sharply in the first quarter and remained at 10,000 units in the second. Which graph do you think they're talking about here?
E.
E. Okay, all right, so have a look at 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Talk to each other and discuss which graph is represented by which sentence. So talk to each other, which graph, I want you to agree which graph is represented by which sentence. Okay, what about number 2? Which graph do you think is number 2?
C.
About number 3? Digital single downloads increased by 12% in the first half of the year.
C.
Company profits peaked at 34.7 million in June.
F.
There was a dramatic decrease in unemployment last year from 7% to 2.7%.
A.
Again, sorry?
A.
B.
A.
E.
A.
I still can't catch what you're saying. Okay, so A. And there was a rise in production costs between April and June, followed by a slight fall between July and September.
D.
Got B for number 2, right?
D.
D. Okay, so let's have a look at D. Yeah. There was a rise in production costs. Now, in D, is there a rise or a fall?
Is fall. Sorry.
So, is it likely to be number 6? So this is why you need to discuss your answers, okay? And that's really what I'm trying to get you to do. Think about what you're reading. So let's have another look. Could you check which graph is represented by which sentence? Perhaps you could discuss it together and you could talk about it. Number 1, which graph? E. Number 2,
D.
D. Number 3, which graph? Digital single downloads increased by 12% in the first half of the year.
C.
C.
Again, sorry?
C.
C. Okay, and company profits peaked at 34.7 million. So number 4,
F.
F. There was a dramatic decrease in unemployment last year from 7% to 2.7%.
A.
F is going to be A. There was a rise in production costs between April and June, followed by a slight fall between July and September. So number 6
E.
is going to be B. Okay. All right, great. So last exercise for today. Have a look at exercise number 2. And I want you to put the correct preposition into the sentence. By, to, at, in, from, of. Talk to each other. Which preposition should go into which sentence? No? Okay. Well, perhaps you can do that for homework then. Okay. This could be your first homework. And second homework, what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to change sentences into a verb or a noun form. So sales of CDs rose slightly. Last month, there was a slight rise in CD sales last month. Each sentence, if it's a noun, change it to a verb. If it's a verb, change it to a noun. That can be homework number 2. Okay, and I'll have this document sent to you after the class. Okay, any questions about what we've done today? Any comments? Okay, well, we'll leave it there. I'll get these documents sent to you after the class, and I'll see you again tomorrow morning at the same time. Bye-bye. Have a great afternoon.
Bye bye.
Bye bye. Thank you for today.
Thank you.
Thank you.